Hey, so today I'm going to teach you about the difference between controlled dopamine and desired dopamine, and these are in two different parts of your brain. I don't particularly remember where the desired dopamine is at, but I know that the controlled dopamine is in your frontal lobe, and this is why people who are kids lack judgment, is because they lack the access to controlled dopamine, which I'll explain in a second, which basically just inhibits their thinking skills, their future thinking skills, which is why they make rash decisions, which is the whole like joke about kids' frontal lobes not being formed until they're like early 20s, especially guys. So basically, the premise behind this is the difference between desired dopamine and controlled dopamine are two different parts of your brain, but they use the exact same molecule, but they trigger different things. So desired dopamine is what you typically know as instant gratification. This is like scrolling on TikTok or sex, food, drugs, things that is super gratifying but makes you feel pretty bad afterwards. Instant gratification is typically associated as bad, and it can be good at times, but typically it's destructive. But where this comes from is from the evolutionary system where we need to get food, and it helps us to remember things, right? So if we see a new berry bush that's just grown and we go and pick berries, that's something that would fall into the food category. That releases a lot of dopamine. Well, when you release a lot of dopamine, then a lot of motion is associated with that memory, and then you'll be able to remember that where that berry bush is. It's also like a driver of when you get dopamine, you feel motivated. That's like the whole motivation is dopamine. And so when you feel motivated, you're more likely to go do the work, to find the berries, to go get food, to survive. And so desired dopamine was just like a very simple, like I wouldn't say like lack of complexity, but it's much more simple than the controlled dopamine system. So this is just to help us the very basics: reproduce, get food, and there's no morals involved with this, like at all. So it doesn't care if we got to kill someone. It doesn't care. There's no morality or critical thinking involved in desired dopamine. You want what you want, even if you don't want to, like deep down in your conscious thoughts say like this is a terrible idea. You do it anyway. That's what desired dopamine is. Now, controlled dopamine, the difference between these two. So controlled dopamine is in your frontal lobe and it's a different part of your brain, but it is the exact same type of dopamine, and it develops in your early 20s when you're a guy, around there, probably the same for women. But this is why children also get ADHD. And so, while desired dopamine is associated with instant gratification, controlled dopamine is associated with ambition. So if you dream big and you want to accomplish a lot and you're a very ambitious person, this is your controlled dopamine. So desired dopamine is present. I'm going to go get that thing right now, and it's intense pleasure. It's faster acting, I would say. Controlled dopamine is forward looking. It is the part of our brain that has allowed us to, for the first time ever, and given us an evolutionary advantage, to think about future consequences of our current actions. And so this has allowed us to plan. And this is where the ambition comes from. So if you want to be successful, you want to run a business, you want to get in good shape, you can conceive a plan in order to get there and achieve that thing. And so this is what controlled dopamine is. So when you're thinking about the nice car that you want to own, or the house you want to own, or the land you want to own, or all of your achievements that you want to get, typically material, although it doesn't have to be material, your brain releases controlled dopamine, which is why you enjoy sitting and dreaming out your future. This is controlled dopamine, right? Versus eating food or watching porn or something like that would be desired dopamine. But perceiving a possible future and then the actions about how to get there, that's going to be controlled dopamine. Now, where does this become problematic? So this is actually like extremely fascinating to me. So if you have low controlled dopamine, which is like some people have low controlled dopamine, you typically have ADHD. And when people assign ADHD meds are just dopamine. So it increases dopamine activity in your brain, and then it will increase to a normal controlled dopamine level. So people with low controlled dopamine levels inside of their brain have ADHD, and it is curable. You get on some form of dopamine medicine, or you don't. If you're against meds, it doesn't matter. But the idea is that it is treatable. So there's something that we can do about this. It is literally a chronic lack of dopamine. So we add more dopamine to the system, and then it fixes itself. Now, there's a problem with high controlled dopamine. So if you have a lot of controlled dopamine, you typically don't feel many here and now hormones such as serotonin or oxytocin, vasopressin. These are all hormones that make you feel good with what you have. Instead of looking to the future, such as like desired dopamine would be like the sex that you could have and then you appreciate that in the moment, but the more sex you have, the less you appreciate it. Or the more of the donuts that you eat, the less you like the donuts. That's desired dopamine. But eating a nice dinner and appreciating how it tastes and all of those intricate things, that is things like serotonin, and that's here now hormones. But the problem is dopamine literally counteracts those hormones. So it's very hard, if even impossible, beg I say, or dare I say, I don't know enough about it to say impossible, but it's you can't feel here and now hormones like appreciation and gratitude at the same time at which you are feeling dopamine, so some sort of ambition for the future. So it's very hard to feel an intense sense of ambition for the future while also being extremely grateful and happy with what you already have, because ambition is wanting more, essentially. It's just a strong sense of a belonging or a need to do more. Now, where this comes to the problem is when you have a high controlled dopamine, you have very, very low here and now hormones, very low serotonin. So you are never appreciative of what you have. And this is very common in extremely high achievers. And I'm not a high achiever yet, but I see this in myself. And that's why I wanted to make this video, is because if it happens to me, then maybe the people that YouTube recommends this video, it also happens to, and maybe it'll help you actually do something about it. So people who have high controlled dopamine are more likely to be depressed, because you're going to go and you're going to put a lot of work into things. You're going to put a lot of grit into things. You're going to work 12, 13, 14, 15-hour days towards a common goal, and you're going to be ambitious and you're going to have huge goals, and then you're going to achieve them, and then you're not going to feel anything because you're instantly on to the next goal. So if you're one of those people who ever achieves something and then doesn't celebrate, it's very short-lived good feelings, and then you're instantly on to the next thing. An example in the book I was reading used Buzz Aldrin, like one of the guys that went to the moon the first time. And he went to the moon and he was interviewed about how exciting it was. And he said, oh yeah, like we just moved on to the next thing. Like he didn't realize how monumental that was, and he didn't care. And so this is an example of somebody who has high controlled dopamine, somebody who is not impressed by their current or happy with their current results, their current achievements, and they constantly are wanting more. And so this is where the idea of materialism comes from, is because it'll create this spiral where you're no longer happy with what you have, so you want more, and you think that by wanting more, you'll then become happy with what you have, and then you get more, and you're still not happy with it. And so this is this stomach that is never filled, this hole, this void that is never filled in us. So people who are high in controlled dopamine always feel that void. I want more money. I want nicer cars. I want this lifestyle that we've been programmed by all of like these business people posting online that we all want to have. This is high controlled dopamine. And I genuinely believe that social media, especially the modern social media with the whole like get rich online thing, it has created a generation full of people who are high in controlled dopamine. People who are unhappy with what they have and are constantly hungry for more. But then when they get more, they realize that that wasn't what's going to make them happy. And so it's this like this puts a scientific lens on the truth and axiom that is settled time about like material things will not make you happy. And it's easy to say that when you have material things, but for all of us who don't yet, who still want to go get things and succeed and get nice cars and have a lot of money and have financial freedom, we don't understand that because we haven't experienced it yet. But this is the mechanism behind it, is we have extreme ambition because we want to be super successful. But the reality of the situation is the reason why we're so ambitious is because we have high controlled dopamine, which means that we have a very hard time feeling grateful for the things that we have naturally. Like literally biologically, it is very hard for us to feel grateful for what we have. So for some reason, this controlled dopamine tricks us into believing that once we have more, then we will be happy. But the reality is this will always stay the same. So what can you do to change it? What I'm saying here is if this always stays the same, as soon as you achieve all of your dreams, it probably will not make you happy. You will probably just want more. And so this thing that you're thinking about all the time and you wake up every day telling yourself that you want and you need and you must do and that you're meant for something bigger, it's probably an illusion from your brain. And that sucks to hear, but the thing is that doesn't mean you can't still do it. It just means that now you can understand that you probably won't be happy, and we can try and find ways to make you happy while also allowing you to do it. So just in summary, like what I'm trying to say here is, most of us, because of social media and comparing ourselves and all the dreams that we've been sold and being able to see so many opportunities online because the internet's connected the world, most of us have high controlled dopamine now. So we're not happy with what we have and we want more. We want to be successful. We want to get rich online. But the reality of the situation is it's kind of a lie our brain is telling us. And once we do succeed, because I do believe all of you can and I will too, once we do, we think that that will make us happy and fulfilled. But the reality is that is not true scientifically. We will not feel fulfilled. And it goes straight in line with the axiom that you will not feel fulfilled no matter how much money you have and no matter how much material things you get. And that is exactly why. And so what I want to try and do here is try and give you ways to still succeed, because I don't expect, now that you're hearing this, and I definitely didn't when I learned this, to give up on my dream. Like, I'm still going to do the exact same thing I was going to do before. It was a little bit like depressing thinking like, oh, well, it's not all going to be worth it. But like, I'm still going to do it. You're still going to do it. So how can we do it and still be happy? So how can we mess with this high controlled dopamine to try and make it more normal while also retaining the work ethic and the aspirations that we have? And well, what I propose is you either have thoughts or lifestyle. So I can think about how at peace I am with my day and think about how I'm happy with all the things I have, but then during the day work very hard. And this is a good balance, right? So I'm not constantly obsessing over wanting more and constantly working over more, because then my life becomes an obsession about wanting more, which is exactly what this is. And so this introduces this little bottom part here, this little conclusion. The glare is probably not letting you see it, but to make this better, the high controlled dopamine, you need hobbies. And that sounds really stupid after all this, but I've had this personal experience with this before, and I never understood why until now. But I used to try and learn to play the guitar, and I would go watch the sunset at night, and I would drive out and play my guitar watching the sunset. And I've stopped doing that, and I've stopped doing many of the hobbies that I used to do because I wanted to focus full in on my business and getting successful, financially free, etc. Like probably what we're all trying to do. But the problem is as I let that go, I shifted my focus from like 30% what I have, 70% what I want, to like 100 and 0. And so now I'm all ambition and I can't rest. And some would call this a blessing, some would call this a curse. I would call it a curse. And the only reason I say that is because now that I'm aware of this, I understand that no matter how much I get, I will always want more. And so you do need some sort of balance. And I hate that word, and I hate when people use it, because balance is how you fail. But what I mean is balance is hormonal balance. Like, not like you need to balance your lifestyle. You can still work 15 hours a day. I don't care. But you need to do something that forces you to be present and appreciate the current moment with what you have and get your mind off of the future. Because right now, most of us, our minds are probably so focused on the future that we almost forget the present half the time. And I know that as time passes, I seem to be more and more and more future looking instead of present looking. Versus probably 2-3 years ago, I had a super good outlook on this. Like 30 to 40% of my time was spent on things that I really liked, but I still worked my ass off and I still got more done than even I get done today. And I'm super convinced that the reason why I got more done then than I do today is because I had this form of balance with these neurotransmitters. So if we can get hobbies and do something that forces us to be in the moment and appreciate the current moment and be happy with what we have, which is basically forcing serotonin out of us, then that will allow us to get less of a high controlled dopamine, more towards a balance. Now, naturally, I still want a pretty high controlled dopamine, but what my problem is I feel like I'm 100-0 or 90-10 right now. And I really want to be in like the 70-30 area. So how can I decrease my high controlled dopamine, but not so much so that I lose all ambition? And so it's really just how much time you spend on it. So like, instead of spending 100% of my day pursuing ambitions, I can spend maybe 30% of my day doing things that are hobbies or things that make me feel present, and then 70% of my time or day. And when I say your day, I mean like actions and thoughts. So like if you spend 30% of your day thinking about how grateful you are for the things that you currently have, and then the other 70% of your day working for the things that you want, that's the same thing. Like, thoughts are reality to us. And so to sum all of this up, right, super quickly, is most of us, because of social media, probably have high controlled dopamine, which means that we are extremely ambitious and don't allow any room for appreciating what we have or have already accomplished. And this makes us a society full of people who constantly want more but are never happy with what we have. And for some reason, we still expect, for some random reason, we still expect that once we get what we are desiring or what we're like, what all this ambition is directed towards, that will make us feel fulfilled. But the reality is it will not, because for as long as you are a high controlled dopamine person, you will always be a high controlled dopamine person. This doesn't just change the day that you become successful. You will always want more. And so the key now is to, so you're not miserable for the rest of your life, try and manage it and manipulate it. So we know we can lower it, right? Or we can raise it, sorry, with ADHD meds, but we don't want to raise it. We want to lower it. So how can we lower it? Well, we need to do things that force us to appreciate what we have. And what forces you to appreciate what you have more than being in the moment? So whether this is hanging out with loved ones, Personally, what I've found to be the most compelling is hobbies. So I used to go watch the sunset and play my guitar and learn to do that. And I dropped that completely because I wanted to spend that time focusing on work. But I actually notice I'm less productive at work the less of that time I have because I'm less appreciative for what I have, which makes me more, I don't want to say depressed, but it makes me less energized and happy with my current life. And so instead of being energized towards the future, I get kind of down about where I currently am. And so I genuinely am trying to make the case to you right now that if you start picking up a hobby, then your high controlled dopamine will go down and you will feel more energized and happy with what you have, which will give you more energy to do harder work about what you want, and you will probably succeed faster. And so that's the punchline, is if you pick up a hobby and you feel like you're somebody with a high controlled dopamine, which is somebody who's super ambitious but never feels fulfilled with what they do, and you expect that for some reason you'll be fulfilled once you achieve your dreams, introduce some sort of hobbies, things that force you to feel grateful for what you currently have. For me, it's playing the guitar because I like good music and it makes me feel present and happy and it makes me feel all warm inside. And that's what we want. We want the serotonin. We want the present. And by doing that, you'll slowly shift your brain over time in the same way that you've shifted your brain over time and become more ambitious by watching all these YouTube videos about how much success you can have. You do the same by just forcing your brain to show how much you currently have and how grateful for you currently have. And then you'll slowly shift to somebody who has a bit of a high controlled dopamine, but not such a high controlled dopamine that you're going to be miserable for the rest of your life and unhappy with everything that you ever have. And so this is basically just a big argument for you will probably be more productive if you get some hobbies. So go get some hobbies, do something that makes you present and appreciate the current moment, and it will change your life. Bye.